All right, welcome everyone. I think we are ready to get started.
Terrific. Thank you, Mackenzie. Welcome, everyone. Please, if you would go ahead and send a quick invitation and a hello in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. If you'd like to add also your role in the chat, that would be terrific. And as you can see in the chat, we have a link, and that link is to a one-page s'more that accompanies this webinar. So if you want to go ahead and click on that, we're going to have resources that we refer to throughout the webinar that are located for you to view and download on that website.
Our apologies, the chat is enabled now, so you should be able to start seeing that.
Super. Okay, we're going to give everyone just a minute or two to join us. A lot of people are trickling in. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, I see some friendly faces. Hello, Ron. We're happy you're here. Hello, Elif. We're happy you're here. Super. So if you're just joining us, please go ahead and say hello in the chat. Introduce yourself if you would like to share your role and where you're located. That would be lovely. And a co-chairperson of the UDL IRN Implementation SIG, Sherry Smith, is also with us, and she has in the chat added a hot link to a one-page site that will accompany our webinar today. So you'll be able to download resources and also follow along through accessing information on that one page.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Terrific. Ilias, I'm so happy that you're here with us. Welcome from Panama. Excellent. I'm just calling out a few names that I recognize, but we're just happy everyone had a chance to take time out of their schedules to be here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Beth Stark. I'm the co-chairperson of the UDL IRN Implementation Special Interest Group. And I am so honored and pleased to be joined by my co-chair, Sherry Smith. If you want to go ahead and give a hello, that'd be great.
Hi, welcome. Nice to see all of you. Hopefully we'll see you also at our session on Friday.
It's right. On the 15th, we'll have our quarterly meeting, and there will be a hot link that you can access if you'd like to join us. At the bottom of the site, the one-page s'more that we've created to go along with this webinar. And of course, as you can hear, I have just a touch of laryngitis, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. So thank you for your patience. And closed captioning is enabled. So I'm hoping that my voice clarity won't get in the way of you enjoying your time with us. We have a very special guest with us today. And many of you may recognize her smile, and certainly you have at least one of her resources on your shelf if you are passionate about universal design for learning like we are. Dr. Louie Lord Nelson is joining us from Indiana today. Louie is a former special education teacher. She was also a district level UDL coordinator before it was a thing. And she completed her UDL postdoctoral fellowship at CAST. She now spends a lot of time working directly in classrooms with administrators and with policymakers around the world. And she's really committed to the global context and making sure that universal design for learning is truly universal. She's also currently partnering with USAID and implementing partners to communicate what UDL is and how it can be applied throughout the 64 low and middle income countries served by the US. And a special highlight, she was recently invited to participate in the Global Inclusive Schools Forum at UNESCO, which will be held in Paris, France in March to celebrate the anniversary of the signing of the Salamanca Statement. So without further ado, I want to welcome Louie Lord Nelson to our webinar to introduce her revolutionary concept and model, the UDL Gears. Welcome, Louie.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks, Sherry, for hosting me, inviting me. This is a big honor. It really is. I've been connected with this, and Mackenzie, you too, in your background role. I've been a partner with UDL IRN since the beginning, so it's really exciting to be participating in this way too. So I want to ask folks, you can put this into the chat, just when you think about UDL, what is one thing that you're hoping to accomplish? It's kind of like your why, but shrink it down, just like one thing that you're hoping to accomplish when you apply UDL. Go ahead and put that in the chat. See accesses and removing the barriers, entry points, variability, reducing barriers. Meeting those student needs broadly, the equitable stuff, learning, yes. You guys are on it. Deep pedagogy, flexibility, yeah. Awesome. So we come to this and keep putting them in, keep putting them in. You know, we've all come to UDL for different reasons. And while we've been working with it, we've discovered other reasons, whether that's because we've heard other people talking about it, whether it's because of our own investigation, whether it's a mix of those two, which I'm really thinking that that's what it is. Yes, eliminating ableism. Yeah. So when we think about that, sometimes we can narrow, or we aren't thinking broadly about what can happen. And also our friends who are newer to UDL and within that part of the journey aren't seeing that holistic thing of what UDL can be and can do. Oh, I just went to the very end and that was a mistake. So I'm just going to quickly do this because I know how to do that. Okay. All right. So the next thing I want you to think about, which just seems like it's totally off topic of UDL, but I want you to think about brushing your teeth. And when you think about brushing your teeth and the practice of brushing your teeth, there are probably some skills that you need to have to be able to do that. And there's also some mindsets that put you in sync with taking care of your teeth, right? So let's think about those skills for a second. Some of those skills are actually putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush, getting that toothbrush into your mouth. If you're like me and you try to do multiple things while you're getting ready in the morning, sometimes I miss my mouth and I like put the toothbrush on my cheek. So I have to kick in that skill of being able to, right, get it in the right place, putting the pressure that we're supposed to have on our teeth, getting that toothbrush all the way around, rinsing our mouth completely. There's all sorts of different things. And if perchance you're thinking that that's not a skill, I want you to think about young children. If you've in life had the opportunity to teach a young child how to brush their teeth, I'm sure that you remember those times where, you know, they simply like lick the toothbrush and they think they're done, or they eat the toothpaste, or whatever it comes, right? There is a skill that we need. But also what we have to have are mindsets around brushing our teeth and oral hygiene. So a few of them, I should brush and floss so many times a day. So I believe that dental hygiene impacts the rest of my health. I believe I should spend my money on my dental hygiene. So when you think about the practice of dental hygiene, brushing your teeth, and some of those skills that I talked about, or all of them, what are some other I believe statements that would align with brushing teeth, with dental hygiene? Go ahead and put those in the chat. Yeah. Dental hygiene impacts your overall health. People prefer talking to you when your breath is fresh. I think that's good. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's important to learn. Yep. Nobody likes bad breath. Yeah. Uh-huh. We even have beliefs attached to money when we think about dental health. Like, I believe it's worthwhile to spend money on my dental health, to spend money on the toothpaste, on the toothbrushes. Yeah, it mitigates costs down the road. You know, you're going to have that increase in your confidence. Yes. Yeah. These are beliefs that we have that actually help drive our practice of completing our oral health, because prevention and ongoing care is important. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes it slips for me. I'm just being honest, right? And other things will get in the way. I'm exhausted at night and I just want to get into bed, right? And then there are other times where I can kick in and thinking about the toothpaste use. I kick in and I'm like, oh, and I let the mindsets right drive me. And I can acknowledge that, oh, this dental hygiene, this is really important for me to do. I'm going to put those skills into action and I'm going to put this practice in. And now you guys are talking about toothpaste. I think that's awesome. I think that's so good. Share all your tips that you'd like to. I think that's awesome. All right. So, but those of you who want to go off of dental hygiene and want to shift, you can shift with me. The rest of you, you can keep going on sharing toothpaste and dental floss and everything else. So I want you to choose one of these things. I'd like for you to either imagine a sunset, just imagine a sunset, or I want you to think about the opening bars of the Alleluia chorus. Give you about 15 seconds. All right. If you thought about a sunset, place in the chat where you were when you saw that sunset. For example, this is from the point of view of my back porch, because for 8, 9 months out of the year, my husband and I are sitting on the back porch, looking out past our neighbor's home and watching the sunset every evening. That's our television set. So the rest of you, where are you when you're observing this sunset that you thought about? Looking out towards the Pacific, yeah. Pacific Ocean, or yeah, there's Oregon coast. Beach, 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 on the beach. Lots of beaches. Caraco, driving home, Mountain Pass, Sonoran Desert. Yeah. So we have places that we're thinking about, right? The vacationed at over at River. Beautiful places. All right. So now what I'm going to do, so some of you opted for thinking about the music, and I am going to share with you 2 examples, really quick, like 5-second examples. All right. So maybe that's what you thought of when you thought about the Alleluia chorus. Now, others of you possibly might have had the opportunity to hear this. All right, so different examples, but they come from the same body of music, inspired by the same thing. So Marin Alsop, that's over 30 years ago, and then people have drawn on that since then. But different ways to hear that same piece of music. So whether or not you were thinking about the sunset, whether you were thinking about the music, context comes down to context, especially with the sunset, because that's the same thing. The earth is turning, and so we aren't seeing the sun anymore, right, from where we are. But we know that every night, even if I'm sitting on my back porch, that's one of our favorite things, is because it looks different every night. Never mind the shifting, right, that occurs because the whole axis thing, but the colors, the clouds, and even on a stormy night, there's some semblance of a sunset, right? So it's a same thing, but you have that context that's affecting that. So when I was thinking about universal design for learning and that question of what does this look like, as I do my work, and I'm literally in classrooms I was in northern Indiana yesterday and the day before, up on the border near Michigan and Chicago, Illinois. All right. So way up there in the corner. And then I think about my experiences in Cambodia or Uganda or any place else in the world. And everybody wants to know, what does UDL look like? And I keep going back and saying, it's context. But then when I was thinking about, well, what's the consistency? What is the consistency? Like the fact that the earth turns, so we have the sun set. What is the consistency? And what I kept noodling with was, well, there are practices that always align. There are skills that align. There are mindsets that align. So I noodled with this and I went into reading what other folks have talked about, because it's great. It's way fun to have an idea in your head, but UDL isn't about Louis Lord Nelson. UDL is a collective. It's owned by everybody. So I just wanted to see what other folks were talking about. And I specifically wanted to see what folks outside of the US were talking about, because it was created here in the US and it's right now heavily leaning toward and it's using the US literature. So I wanted to see what other folks were talking about and then see where that aligned. And not surprisingly, a lot of stuff did. But when we think about practices like your daily instructional stuff, your skills, what you're applying when you're using that daily practice, and the mindsets that you're applying that drive the skills, that drive the practice, those are the kind of things I was looking for. And what do I mean by that? So here's an example. So like if somebody were to think about the practice of, we'll just call it lecture. I know that sounds more higher ed, but just a great safe example, because most of us as adults, we've been through this experience. So it's easy to use. So we think about somebody who likes to lecture and we think about, okay, what skills are they using? Well, they have to have the content knowledge. They have to be really good at preparing their notes. They have to be able to write on the board or adding to the digital document as they're going along. And there is some classroom management that goes along with that, just a little bit, but there's some. And now you think about the mindset that somebody would have going along with lecture, perchance. And these are mindsets that this hypothetical person would have. So I believe because of course, mindsets are what you believe, that I have the knowledge and I need to share it. I have this, I gotta share it with other people, that I can efficiently deliver that content. and that I can keep control of my class when I'm talking, right? So it goes back to that classroom management. So if I'm the only one talking, I've got everything under control. I can present my content in entertaining ways. We know lots of people who are entertaining when they present, and people are like, really want to listen to them. And I think everybody wants to be that person. So I think a lot of people think they are that person. And then I believe I always use visuals to help my students understand the topic. So these might be a practice, the skills that support that practice, and the mindsets that drive that practice, right? So that's what I was playing with and noodling around when I was thinking about what are those consistencies across the UDL implementation. And early on in this process, I instantly saw the image of gears, because if you think about like the inside of a watch, for example, if you've seen that, an analog watch, there are the little gears and those cogs that fit together. And that's what make each gear turn with one another. And the power of that is that when you have all the cogs working and they're there, then you have a very smooth and efficient and effective machine. If a cog or two are missing, if they're broken, it still works, but it's not as great. It can go, but it's not as great. And you need all the parts of that set of gears to make the machine work. So in my mind, well, you need to have those mindsets, those skills, and those practices that are helping with the UDL guidelines and putting those into action. Because we know that the UDL guidelines in and of themselves are a great prompt for all of us. They really help send us a direction, but I even stop there because they can be misinterpreted if folks don't really understand what they're saying. And we know there's language barriers within them for any language, but we want the intent, right? We talk about that intentionality. So that was the other part of the thinking for me behind all of this. So Beth and Sherry had this great idea, and I was like, okay. So also in the SMORE, for those of you who are using that and looking at that, you'll see these same words that are in the graphic on the screen. But when I took the UDL aligned practices and dumped them in for a word cloud, the big things that we see, academic shows up, barriers, learners, emphasize, general, identify. So off to the right on the screen, you see UDL aligned practices guide instructional leaders to, and it's what we're thinking of is those practices are going to guide that person to do certain things within their environment. I used the words instructional leaders because I did not want anyone to think that UDL is just for classroom teachers, right? We don't want it to be thought of as just for administrators. It can be used to help design any kind of a learning environment. So I chose to use instructional leaders for that. So you can look at that list, you can see kind of like the big ideas when I was talking about guiding instructional leaders to ... Instructional leaders with UDL aligned skills. What are some of the big ideas that came out with those? Well, goals and objectives. Again, learners. You can see assessment is there. You can see variety is there. Instructional materials, you can see that. All these different pieces are in there, but our skills are helping move our learners forward and toward becoming what we know to be currently defined as expert learners. And finally, instructional leaders with UDL mindset. So the UDL mindset, you can see what's really centered there, the learner. The learner is what's centered in a UDL mindset. And so learners, learning, those are like the three biggest words. And then you have every, right? That was like, that's huge. That just comes out over and over and over again. I'm going to step back for 1 second before I send you in and thinking in groups here really quickly. in the process of creating these statements that ultimately were placed, like I said, the ideas came from literature. So that's everything from white papers, yes, professional journal articles, but also dissertations. I think dissertations are brilliant. You have a person who is working really hard to show really good evidence and to argue in front of a group of people this single idea. It has to be well researched, and it has to be validated if they've done a study with it. So it's got some quality stuff in there. And so I always like reading them. I think they're really interesting. And so some of this information came from there. It wasn't standalone. I would find in other locations. And there are hordes of materials out there all over the world of people expressing how they're utilizing the framework. But what I did next was I tapped into friends around the world, and some of them are here. Thank you so much. Like I saw Alif was here. And I asked them to review what I wrote in English and asked them if the translation of that idea, if it was translated into their home language, would the concept in English be carried over? Or did we need to change the language so that we ensured that the concept carried? And I'm so thankful for their feedback. If you go onto my website and you care to look, there are plenty of people from all over who have participated in this. If you don't see your country represented and you want to participate, just let me know and you can help with the translation too. That would be awesome. It's just making UDL more accessible across more languages. But it goes back to the base of how it's interpreted, right? Because in this language of English, again, I needed to be sure that whatever idea I really wanted to hold forward was actually going to make it over during the translation period. So I am ever thankful for my colleagues around the world who helped with that. So what you're going to have the opportunity to do is we're going to do breakout rooms, and 4, 5 people per breakout space. If you opt to go in there, it says chat a little bit or not. If you're like, nah, not my thing, it's okay. Don't click to join. Just sit and think on your own. But within that space, I'm going to ask you to choose one of 2 options. This is on the s'more. Beth was kind enough to put that together. So you have that when you go into this breakout space. So one option that you guys would look at one practice, one skill, and one mindset across the gears, and then talk about those with one another and talk about the connection that you see between those, how they influence each other. So one practice, one skill, one mindset. The second option, which actually you have 1, 2, 3 others. So one of them, you're going to read through one of the areas. You choose mindsets or skills or practices. One idea, what you see or experience in your practice. Talk about that. So looking at the mindsets, what's something that you see or experience in your practice? Another idea, what do you see or experience in your environment? So you may be thinking across your school. You may be thinking across your district, across your country. And the last one, if you read through mindsets, skills, or practices, and you're like, I think there's an additional mindset. I think there's an additional skill. I think there's an additional practice that you witnessed that would align with universal design for learning. So we are, according to what I have, we're almost 30 minutes in. So why don't we do 10 minutes with you guys out and hanging out in that s'more, which let's see if I was good enough to have that up on my screen. I do.
And Lou, as you're pulling that up, we have one slight error on our parts. We set this up as a webinar, so breakout room. So what I'm proposing is take a few minutes on your own and think about those prompts, and then we can just share either out loud or in the chat with each other. Would that be good?
That would be great. That would be fine. So when you're looking at the s'more, if you go right under where you see my picture, you can see the UDL approach, and it says the UDL gears, and this is the PDF version of it. which I think is a little bit more accessible. The gears is kind of fun to look at, but this just gives you the list. So I'm going to suggest that each of you click on the download, and then you choose how you want to participate. And heck, you can just start putting your ideas into the chat as soon as you would like, right? So Sherry, go ahead and say again what your suggestion was, just to make sure everybody is clear.
I'm suggesting, why don't we take, and we can even put a timer up, or we can, set our own timers, maybe 4 to 5 minutes to just think and reflect on one of those two options on our own. And then when we're ready, if people would be willing to unmute their mics or, share in the chat.
Perfect. All right. Then what I'm going to do is bring this up and resume share, and I'm going to do a new share, and I'm going to take us over to this timer, and it's already counting down. So I'm going to mute my microphone and my video. I'm still sitting here, and I'm going to bring up my chat so I can see that. But just take a few minutes and think about these things. And again, start chatting in the chat as soon as you'd like. We'll just keep that going. Here we go. So the s'more link is in the chat. There we go. see the request to put the prompt in the chat, and so we're working at that right now. There you go. The prompts are in the chat now. Thank you. I know the clock has 1 minute, 40 seconds and counting down, but you can start entering your thoughts into the chat as you would like. We'd love to see them and do our best to respond to them. Yeah, Michelle, Thomas, he's so awesome. Yeah, the +1. The next best step is a phrase that I use, but also it's the +1. It's the one thing. It's the one step, small thing you can take. Yeah, it's great fun. He's honestly somebody who gave me feedback on the gears to make me know that I was okay. This wasn't too crazy. Yeah, yeah. Alania, very true. Yeah. We just have to keep trying and playing with it. Nice, Michelle.
Yeah, so some people, when you reply, there's a little in the chat section, there's a two and then a blue box. And if you select everyone, then everyone will see your chat. And if you want it just to go to the hosts and the panelists, then you select hosts and panelists. If you want it to go to one person, you can choose that one person. So some people are replying to the host, and I wonder if it's meant for everyone.
Yeah, to everyone. There we go. Yeah. So here's a host and panelists that came across. I find that mindset is the first area to grow with UDL. With the right mindset, you can change your practices. It also provides some grace for teachers to grow. I think that's true, Alias. I think it is true. What I also notice is that when I'm talking about this with some folks, mindsets are personal, right? They are our own. And so that could be a scary conversation for some folks. I will say, however, that most of the time our mindsets come out in our daily practices. Just kind of what we do by default is where our mindsets often show up, based on our context, but that's there. So I give grace that way too. Yeah. More thoughts, more thoughts. Got a couple, 2, 3 minutes left. And if you're not feeling safe about answering any of those questions, maybe how you might use the information from the gears in your own work or work with others, putting that idea in there too would be great. Thank you, Sherry. So as folks are thinking and typing, I'll give an example. Well, here we have everyone. Oh, now they're coming. Woo! Here we go. Yeah, having a variety of methods for those high expectations. Yeah, yeah. Because that variability, to meet that variability, absolutely. Thank you, Adero. That's lovely. So finding your need to grow and expand. It's interesting because as I introduce these to some people, they're like, yep, I do that. Yep, I do that. Yep, I do that. And my hope is that we use them as a reflection material because I'm sorry, we don't do everything every day. There are some days when we're all just a little off, right? And so using that as the opportunity to go, I want to get stronger over here. Yeah. And thank you, Elaine. Oh, and Aleph. Yeah, agreeing with Elaine. Yep. Seeing that is helping one another. Thanks, Ron. Doing the prompt for the UDL chat. Oh, that's hard. Yeah, how can parents address the issue? So I think when you find something that makes sense to you and communicates something about UDL to you, sharing that with the school and just saying, hey, I found this resource that made sense to me and it might be helpful to staff as they're moving forward with it. That can be really helpful, especially if your school demonstrates having a good connection with parents. That would be what my doctoral work was in. So I'm pro, but it can be a nice way to do that. So that's the primary suggestion that I have. There are resources out there on schools connecting with families about UDL, and you can get in touch with me and I can share that. All right, we are at time, aren't we? Okay, Beth, you can cut me off if you need to. But
that's the last thing that I want to do, Louie. It has been such a pleasure. And again, you'll have to excuse me. I wasn't going to let a little laryngitis get in my way, but this has been such a joy to learn from you and to understand also like the richness of the research and global connections that went into structuring the UDL gears. So you are such a treasure for all of us who are so enthusiastic about UDL, but also for moving the ball forward. And when I say moving the ball forward, I mean making progress for a more equitable future for all learners. So thank you again. It was an honor to have you. And I want to encourage everyone that's here who spent time with us to go ahead and reach out to Louie. She's incredibly gracious about supporting all of us, and go ahead and access that s'more that we've created to learn more about all of her great work and contributions. And if you're in the mood today, we're going to have the UDL chat hosted by Ron Rogers, who is here with us at 9 o'clock. So you'll find that hashtag UDL chat in our chat. And we'll also be hosting the quarterly meeting for the UDL IRN Implementation Special Interest Group on December 15th. So everyone is always welcome. So we hope to see you there, and we're going to say goodbye, but it's more of a see you later, because we really do hope that everyone will join us again in all the progress we're trying to make as well as UDL enthusiasts. So thank you for being here, and thank you, a special thanks to Louie and Mackenzie for all of your efforts in making this a great session. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon or evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.